Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It is November 16th, 2018, and I'm sitting down right now to do another episode of Planets in Profile. Today's episode, we're going to take a look at Mars in the sign of Pisces. Mars has just recently ingressed into the sign of Pisces. And so as Mars and Venus this year and into 2019 are moving through the signs, I'm going to be continually doing episodes on the different planets in the different signs. We'll start with Mars and Venus, and then gradually I'll move on maybe a little bit later next year to starting to cover other planets like Mercury and the Moon and things like that, but sort of starting with Mars and Venus. So this episode, we're looking at Mars in the sign of Pisces. Let's go ahead and switch over so we can see this cool view. All right, so our recent entry of Mars into the sign of Pisces, I get a lot of emails from readers and viewers always asking, so can you talk about what it means if I have this planet in my birth chart, or can you tell me what this planet's characteristics are like when it's in this new sign? So that's really, again, the intention of this series. So in looking at Mars in the sign of Pisces, there are a few guidelines that if you understand and you can kind of integrate into your understanding of the language of astrology, you will be able to have a pretty wide range of descriptives or adjectives to describe Mars and Pisces with. Your understanding will be more intuitive and more flexible. So Mars in Pisces is the double-bodied feminine water sign, which is the sign of the fishes, and it is the domicile or feminine home of Jupiter. Mars has no essential dignity in Pisces, which means basically that this is not a place that Mars is either greatly harmed or greatly helped. This is not a place where Mars has some kind of amazing strength or great affinity with the planetary host, nor is it one where he has any kind of affliction or hard time with the planetary host. So it's a pretty neutral space for Mars. It can go in either direction, always depending on where the host is at. So this is an important kind of teaching for really understanding planets. A planet is never to be interpreted in a vacuum. You can't just interpret Mars and Pisces. In any chart, Mars and Pisces will always depend, never on its own, always will depend on where Jupiter is located, what Jupiter is doing. Just like in the same way, if you can understand this analogy, if I come to your house as a guest, I don't, in the strict sense of etiquette, that was followed in the ancient world with people coming into your home and being guests in your home, and not just your home, but your family or your tribe or your nation or your land or something like that. The rules about how you would treat a stranger or a visitor were very specific and much more formal in some regards than they are today in our sort of modern world. Things are a little bit more casual. But if you have a more traditional family, for example, you know that when guests come in, there's very specific protocol. And whether that's taking their coats, making sure you offer them something to eat and drink, giving them some place to sit that's comfortable, you try to meet their needs. So similarly, the whole concept of rulership is actually in some ways very misguided, because there's not really, in the ancient Greek tradition, the word oikodespotes or oikodespotes, I've heard it pronounced in different ways, it was more like the steward or the host of a house. And a house was not just, your house, but the house of, like I've said this before, Game of Thrones reference, a house that belonged to a lot of people, a whole family, the extended family. So when a planet is in any sign, it is in the home or the house of another planet. And whenever it's in that sign, it will want whatever it wants by nature of what it is as a planet. So Mars, for example, wants action, wants violence, wants war and blood and cutting, all heavy Mars, the god of war kinds of stuff. Mars wants severing and division. Mars wants to penetrate and to divide. Mars wants to cut and conquer. Mars wants confrontation, competition, hostility, and muscle. Mars likes strength. But Mars is also courage and valor and bravery, guardianship, advocacy, the warrior, sort of noble, sort of chivalrous Mars qualities. And so those are the things that Mars is always in need of, because that's who Mars is. And we always treat someone when they're in our home, we give them what they need based upon who they are and what their unique needs are. So those are the things that Mars needs. Generally speaking, Mars wants or desires to express those qualities. So when it's in a sign that is not its own sign, it relies on the generosity of the host. And if it's in a debilitated place or a more powerful place, it will rely on the host to provide for it either, and that host will provide for it either more or less easily, or in a more or less friendly manner, or with more or less difficulty, or just with more or less resonance. So for example, if I'm in your house and your family is very, very strict or stern, or all the ducks in a row, and I'm kind of like, I'm much more laid back, put the feet up, relax, laugh, take it easy, don't follow the rules so much, make them up as you go. If that's my attitude, how easy will it be for me to feel as though I'm getting what I need when I'm in that person's home, right? You get what I'm saying? Or vice versa. So you have to always take that into consideration. So Mars in Pisces is in Jupiter's home. Jupiter is its host. Jupiter is going to provide for it. And what it means when we say that it has no essential dignity in Pisces is that there's no real conflict and there's no real great immediate resonance with this particular home. So it's pretty neutral. It's like, it could kind of go either way, but it's better than being afflicted for sure, right? So it's not like there's some kind of real beef with the host. That's what you're trying to key in on when you understand a planet and a sign. So what we need to understand then is, what kinds of things does Jupiter give to Mars based on the kinds of things that Mars desires? So Mars, you could say, also is going to, a simpler way of thinking about it is Mars is going to express himself through the lens of Jupiter. You're kind of learning to blend the two significations together a little bit. But I find this analogy about what does Jupiter provide for a guest in Pisces as a really easy way to organize and your thoughts and create a meaningful interpretation. So what are those gifts or qualities that Jupiter gives to Mars when Mars is in Jupiter's home, being like, hey, I'm hungry? Okay, so we already said Mars wants violence, cutting, aggression, hostility, courage. It wants guardianship, advocacy, protection, war, battle. Okay, so all of these light and dark sides of Mars. Well, what does Jupiter have to give? Jupiter has benefits. Just generally speaking, is a planet that gives benefits, good fortune, good luck. It gives grace. It gives that sort of disproportionate sense of having gained something that's bigger, maybe necessarily than what one feels one deserves. And that can go in either negative or positive directions. It makes things bigger. Jupiter is a planet of faith and wisdom and hope. Jupiter is a planet that is it usually is associated with fertility and the growth or proliferation of things. So what does that mean? Well, and then you have to qualify this by saying, well, what kind of Jupiter do we have when we're in the feminine home of Jupiter? It's more emotional, it's more feminine, it's more relational. You could say it's a bit more changeable. So Mars in this sign receives emotional courage, right? So you get that kind of thing. Emotional courage and grandeur. It gets qualities of emotional bigness and courage. So your Jupiter is granting Mars what it wants, but adding, sort of, it says like, well, if you want like courage in a fight, well, I'll give you faith and hope and bigness. And that's where you get almost this, that's why I have St. Michael pictured here. you get this feeling of like the holy war or the holy battle or the uh, going to battle over beliefs, the emotional feeling of needing to defend or protect or guard against something, um, the sense of there being an emotional sense of vigor and competition that is also connected with a wise or sagely quality. So that's how they end up blending like that, because Jupiter is providing for Mars. So again, Mars says, I'd like, I would like to, I'd like to fight someone. And Jupiter says, how about I give you some optimism and emotional enthusiasm and grandiosity? Okay, so if you have a good, noble fight, that could be a really great thing. Boy, you have some, you've got some real charisma, kind of the wind is at your back, and there's a sense of faith in what you're doing. And that's a good thing to bring into a fight. You know what I mean? If you've got to fight for something, having a sense of being confirmed in your vision, being supported in your beliefs, and that fueling the fight or the competition, to believe in something matters. So that might be a really beneficial thing. If you have any kind of action in the world to take, Mars generally is associated with action. Any kind of action can be fueled by optimism, hope, faith, emotional excitement. However, on the flip side, you can also go into territory that's sort of, emotionally grandiose and maybe overly dramatic. Sometimes people get a little bit of a martyr or a savior complex with Mars and Pisces. It kind of blows things out of proportion. It makes them too big. I'm on a crusade, and you're like, really, all you're trying to do is get your breakfast. You know what I mean? And someone's on this emotionally impassioned, tirade about, how beautiful their morning muffin is going to be or something. It can be like that, where it's just something that's so seemingly trivial that someone just has a lot of bravado about. So you do want to be careful of sort of emotional machismo and bravado. It can be very Shakespearean and changeable with the double-bodied or mutable quality of Pisces. But generally speaking, it's also like that feeling of like riding high. There's a card in the tarot, I believe it's the Six of Wands, and it shows a man sort of riding on top of a horse in the Rider-Waite anyway. And he's got like a staff, and there's people in the background like, oh, he's coming victorious, or he's going off to war, or he's coming. I think he has a wreath around his staff, so I think he's probably coming back from something victorious. That is very like Jupiter, Mars in Pisces. Okay, so this gives you some ideas of the kinds of qualities that can come through this. For example, sometimes there's also, Mars is related to science and even to mathematics, because it's about division, and it's about cutting into things, and dividing and analyzing things requires kind of a surgical dissection. So Mars related to surgery, also related to dissection. Sometimes you'll have an auspicious moment for a surgery. If Mars has to cut something out, remove something, and make something whole again, sometimes that's kind of a good sign for trying to restore health, but through some kind of more invasive procedure, Mars being a little bit more invasive. It doesn't have to be intensely invasive. It could just be like minorly invasive, but still a good outcome. You can also think about any kind of analysis that you have to do leading to greater comprehension of a problem, or leading to greater comprehension, wisdom, or knowledge. So analysis and greater encompassing wisdom. So a great time to have a deeper comprehension of something that's more scientific. Whereas sometimes it may just feel like, how science is. Sometimes you're breaking things up, and that analytical mind, sometimes it doesn't know when to stop. And Jupiter, on the other hand, is a planet that wants to build greater wholes. It wants greater unity. And so when it comes together with Mars, sometimes through Mars wants analysis and cutting, and Jupiter's like, well, I've got unity for you. Will that work? And actually something really nice can come out of that. On the other hand, again, sometimes when you put those kind of that cutting and dividing and analyzing quality with the greater sort of bigness of Jupiter, you can also have people getting really puffed up about their ideologies, their faith, their beliefs, people that get that believe that they're getting inspired by something that's coming from on high, and they don't realize in some ways that they're just being co-opted by the grandiosity of Jupiter and Mars, which are really like, in some ways, like, demigods that can sort of possess and pull us around like on puppet strings. So on the other hand, sometimes big initiatives, big ideas that are a little risky, or that kind of sound the trumpet or whatever. So sometimes they're needed, and they get things done. So you have to think about the combination, and remember the analogy. Mars is a house guest in Jupiter's realm. How does Jupiter host and meet the needs or desires of Mars? And think like that. It really, really helps to create interpretations. So if you have this in your birth chart, hopefully this has also given you some sense. Right now in the sky in 2018, Mars is going right into a square with its host Jupiter, which I've already written about. You can go check that out on my website at nightlightastrology.com. If you like this kind of stuff, by the way, I teach a class called Ancient Astrology for Modern Times. We are starting a new one-year program. It's 30 courses plus 12 guest lectures, so 42 classes on the year. Only 30 of them are the ones that I teach and are sort of required. But it's a brilliant, awesome, friendly, warm group class that I teach online through Zoom meetings, just like the one I'm recording on right now. And we start from the ground up and try to reteach people basic astrological concepts from the ancient perspective, which really allows people to become much more organized and concise in the way that they delineate charts. Or in people who are starting from scratch, it's really good. People who have studied a lot but don't necessarily know the ancient roots, also very helpful. So that class starts on Saturdays, December 1st. This is in 2018. I'm sure this will be on my page for a while. So if you're listening to it, I probably will still be teaching this course for a while. So check my website and see what other courses I'm up to if you're watching this somewhere out in the future. All right. Well, thanks everybody so much. And I hope that you're having a great day and that you enjoy this sojourn of Mars in the sign of Pisces. All right. Take care. Bye.